Hey, deserving listeners, Love is Blind, Season 3. Let's rewatch Knowing What We Know Now. Let's watch.
How was the little conversation with Cole at the pool party?
All I said was you're a cute guy, and in the real world, sure.
All right, so this is one of those key scenes to remind everyone. Matt came out of a marriage of 10 year or relationship of 10 years with his high school sweetheart, I believe, and found out that she was cheating 10 years into the relationship, and he was really hurt by that, really upset, but willing to work on the marriage because he'd been with her for so long. And then she came to him a second time, his wife, and said, actually, I'm pregnant, and the father of the child is your best friend or something. I don't quote me on the second part, but at the very least, the first part of like, actually, I'm pregnant. And then they broke up in that moment, either because of him or her or something, or both. And he's talked about how that was really hard for him, and that will do a number on you. You could literally have no relational traumas in that category prior to that moment. After that moment, for the rest of your life, you could have a relational trauma that could be triggered in various moments where you're worried that your partner is going to cheat on you. And so it stands to reason that he would be triggered in this moment that they're referring to, where Colleen and Cole are talking in the pool. And I believe Matt didn't really hear the conversation, but he heard about it. And it was described to him as Cole and Colleen flirting with each other openly. At the very least, he saw the visual, and Colleen was smiling, and Cole was looking very coy. We've all seen that scene. And so absolutely it would trigger him. But what do we do when we're triggered? What do we do with that pain? Jealousy is normal. And he is seemingly transferring that into hostility and anger, and you could argue controlling behaviors, whether he is doing that on purpose or not. There's probably some intentionality around that, like, I need you to not do that anymore. I can't believe that you did that kind of messaging around his demeanor in this moment. And there's so many other ways that he could be communicating this. He could be, and maybe he did behind the scenes later on, I don't know, but he could say to Colleen, hey, we just got to know each other, and, I've been through a lot regarding infidelity, and so I'm really sensitive to that. And I really want you to love me. I love you a lot. I don't want to lose you. And we don't have a huge track record. In fact, that was the first time we've been around other people. So it's kind of the first test, if you will. And I'm not saying I'm testing you, but I'm just saying that I don't have a lot of data to go off of regarding like who you are. I want to think that you're a person that I can trust, but I don't know. And when I saw you talking to Cole, whoa, that really triggered me. And I've been pretty angry, but I know that that's not fair to you. I'm jumping to conclusions. So if it is in your heart to reassure me, if there is anything you can tell me that would help me in this moment to help me not feel like I'm going to lose you or it's going to happen all over again, please do what you can, because I'm spiraling. You could do that. It's vulnerable. It's taking responsibility. It's not blaming someone else. It's not intimidating, but let's watch what he does.
The little conversation with Cole at the pool party.
All I said was you're a cute guy, and in the real world, sure.
I might have said this at the time as well, but Colleen could have helped. It's not really her fault, but if she had the ability to think beyond the intimidation, which would be hard, but if she were able to, she could elaborate a little bit more and intuit, like, okay, it's not my fault that he's triggered, but I could help him out in this moment by saying a little bit more, by saying, yeah, in the moment, all I said was that in the real world, sure, I might be attracted to him, but by no means does that mean I am attracted to him or want to be. I honestly felt like I didn't want to hurt his feelings by telling him what I really felt, which was, I don't think anything about you anymore because I'm with Matt, or I don't know, whatever. It's something a little bit more elaborate. She could have done that. It's not her fault that she's in a position where she's scared, and we don't know what preceded this. I'm guessing that there was hostility, maybe even a lot of hostility that preceded this, so she's shrinking behind walls, which would make sense, but she could do a little bit more.
What's the real world?
In the real world, if I don't have with Cole, I don't even know who that person is. Right. With you, I know who you are.
Yeah, but you didn't tell him that though, right?
I did.
I suspect also that there was a bit of toxic masculinity in this, that not only worries of losing her, but worries of being emasculated, worries of being a beta and not an alpha. All that rhetoric is ridiculous and unscientific and toxic. You know, this idea of somehow you have to be dominant in order to prove yourself as a man. I mean, just think about all the problems in life, personal and between nations, wars, all sorts of stuff, because everyone's insecure to the point where they feel like they have to be in a constant state of establishing dominance. Anyway, that could also be a factor.
I get it.
We didn't have a moment by any means.
Good, bro.
We didn't.
I'm good.
I have so much respect for Zay. And
Obviously, he doesn't.
I have so much respect for you. And
Yeah, Colleen's doing a lot here. She's really trying to extend herself. She's saying, I have so much respect for you. So if I were there, or I was a little birdie on her shoulder, I would say, you're doing great, and take a breath, because you're not in danger, I hope, and there's nothing, you didn't do anything wrong. So, take a breath and take care of yourself, and then say the following thing, something in this zone in your words, if it's in your heart, is go to your place in your heart where you do actually love him, which you might have to calm down and not be afraid of him to identify with that, and reach out to him, maybe even physically, just hand on his hand or shoulder or something, and say, hey, I'm sorry that I did that. I don't know, I was just kind of wrapped up in the moment, but I love you. I want to be with you. Cole is nothing to me. If she said something like that, it's pretty succinct. I imagine that would begin him being able to de-escalate, because she's saying a lot of things that are great, but I don't think it's really getting to the heart of the matter for him. She's saying, I respect Zay, I respect you. Okay, that's great, but I think at the heart of the matter is, do you love me? Is there energy from inside of you that is partial to me, that prefers me? Respect, great, but are you compelled to me? And are you not compelled to other people?
Obviously, he doesn't.
I have so much respect for you, and I didn't know what to say during that conversation.
It's very easy to shut it down. It takes 2 words. That's my man. 3.
Yeah, I'm remembering now, kind of forgot what it was about his demeanor that was problematic, and it's this splaininess, this mansplaininess, this talking down, this lecturing style, which on the scale of things isn't tremendously awful, but as he starts to escalate, it's all in this category of dominance and arrogance and talking down to someone, trying to humiliate them, trying to belittle them, trying to make someone feel small. And I think Colleen is prone to that anyway. There's a lot of things complementing each other in this moment, because you imagine that if Colleen were someone different, say if she were Zay or if she were Raven or something, someone that I don't think has the same personality and potentially the same relational traumas, that they might be able to lean in a little bit stronger towards him, might even be able to say, hey, watch your tone, because I don't deserve, maybe something like that. I think it's a runaway train, because when she does this, which is natural, and she's not to blame for cowering under this intimidation from him, I think it triggers him potentially even more, because she is not in access with her love and attraction to him naturally. And he feels that, and he gets triggered by that, which causes him to engage more in the defensive intimidation. Let's watch.
That's my man. None of the fucking girls told me I was attractive, and they were attracted to me, and they wanted to be with me. And if they did, I would have shut it down and said, I got my eyes on one girl. I don't give a fuck what you think about me. I got my eyes on one girl.
Yeah.
I don't know, but in that moment, it's natural for her to start to cry. It's normal for her to go inward like that. I think she both feels ashamed of herself unfairly, and also defeated, doesn't know what to say. And from his perspective, it could inadvertently trigger him, because one way to interpret her response there is him seeing her internally acknowledge that she is attracted to Cole, or that she isn't fully committed to Matt. Let's rewatch that.
And if they did, I would have shut it down and said, I got my eyes on one girl. I don't give a fuck what you think about me. I got my eyes on one girl.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know, but I'm just, because we use this as a jumping off point, and this is a very common issue that I see in my office in couple therapy, where two people are, one, coming from their own histories of relational traumas, and will see the world through that lens, particularly in high stress moments like this, and also don't have a lot of self-awareness around their emotions and attachment reactivity. Also will engage in defenses that will mask how they really feel. Because, for example, for him, all you see is anger and intimidation, right? But underneath that is obviously a lot of pain and worry about losing her. If he were to be more authentic and accurate with his display of emotion, he would be crying, he would be pleading with her, he would be like, I don't know, I just feel terrified that you're going to leave me. I don't know. Am I worth it? Is anyone going to ever love me again? Can I trust you? I don't know. Is Cole better than me? Is Cole better looking than me? I don't know. I'm just terrified. I'm alone. I feel like I'm not worth it. You know, those kinds of crying, maybe even going into a fetal position or something. I'm guessing that's what's going on underneath it, but that's not what he displays, because that's what a lot of people will do, is they will transfer their worry and their hurt into hostility, particularly men, right? So what I do in my office often is helping people to identify what's really going on for them, and then helping them to communicate that, or at least intuit that from the other person. So for the two of them, the behaviors that they're engaging in might actually be misinterpreted by the other person. For example, Colleen might interpret this as, well, he doesn't believe I'm good enough. He thinks that I'm worthless. He thinks that I'm a stupid little girl. And you could argue that that's a rational conclusion, but what's really happening is that he's absolutely terrified about losing Colleen. It's not fair to her the way that he's treating her, but if she were to understand that, it might help her, one, take things less personally, and two, maybe help him to communicate about. Like, she could say, if she were able to differentiate in this moment, which would be hard to do, but to say, okay, Matt, I'm getting a lot of anger from you, but are you trying to tell me that you were hurt, that your feelings were hurt? Because if that's true, if you communicate that to me, it's going to be easier for me to tend to you in this moment. So, because all I'm getting from you is actually anger and rejection of me, which I don't know if that's what you're trying to communicate. If you want to tell me you were scared of losing me, if you want to tell me that you're hurt, tell me that, because I could appreciate that. I don't appreciate the anger and intimidation, though. So the ability to interpret that in the other person. And there's a lot of different angles that generate from having better understanding or better intuition about what's happening with your partner. Almost always, if not always, whenever your partner is annoying you with anger or rejection, silent treatment or criticism, they are hurt or afraid or both. And almost always, they're hurt because they feel rejected, and or they're afraid of being rejected. It all comes down to that. So much of our emotional system and personality and behavior and evolution is centered around acceptance, going towards acceptance, and moving away from rejection. We depend on other human beings, particularly our attachment figures. So there's a lot of emotions and a lot of thought that is around that. Even people who seemingly don't think about it very often, believe me, they're thinking about it often. So if we can, one, know that about ourselves and communicate that more accurately, and two, intuit that in the other person and help bring that out in them, there are so many better things. Like in this example, this conversation, if oriented around that, could have gone so much more smoothly, right? Whereas in this moment, especially if they have this a number of times, it could cause things to go down a road where they will have compounded relational traumas. Like for her, she could feel smaller and smaller and smaller and more rejected by him and lower self-esteem and more desperate for self-esteem, which actually could lead to infidelity. It's not Matt's fault if she cheats, but it could lead to that. For him, he could retreat behind walls and occasionally give anger, and because a typical profile of someone in Matt's shoes is 9 times out of 10 he'll give the silent treatment. 1 time out of 10 he will do this, where he's hostile and talking down to her, belittling her, and intimidating. And so the more he's triggered, the more he doesn't understand what's going on with her or him, the further down the road that they both will go in this polarizing sort of conflict. And then they come into my office 10 years later, and not only do we have to correct for that, but we have to heal the 10 years of trauma that they've actually imposed on each other. So if you can intervene early in this situation, if you can start early and not add to the traumas to your partner, then you can have a much more happier life. Not only relationship-wise, but your diet tends to do better, your sleep tends to do better, your mood tends to do better, your productivity at work, your parenting, your general mood. All those things improve your general health, generally improve when your relationship is working out better.
Can I take a minute?
So I'm guessing that in this moment, he is still riled up, but is feeling maybe a little bad, hopefully, about doing this to Colleen. So let's watch. Now, on the outside, it seems like he doesn't care at all, but I suspect he deeply, deeply cares. It's one of the big tricks that people like him will commit, is they're so guarded, they're so afraid of being vulnerable and being harmed that they will do everything in their power to not show that to the outside world, maybe even not acknowledge it to themselves. So they're just like, I don't care, I don't need other people, screw the other people, everyone's... When in reality, he is suffering on the inside. It doesn't justify what he's doing, but it does help us to understand the situation more accurately.
We have 4 weeks to get married. And for you to tell people that they're attractive people as an engaged woman, he's a cute guy. And
Right, so we don't know what happened, if there was an edited bit there, but at the very least it looks like he did feel bad. He did feel some empathy, some compassion, because he sees his loved one crying and upset and hurt, and that's great that she could cry. If he could cry, it would help him in this situation. The fact that she cried is actually really great. The fact that she was like, I need a second, it communicates I'm in pain right now. That's the foundation, right? Now, if she were someone else, she could transfer that into anger or rejection or something, and we could imagine that happening. It's hard to imagine Colleen doing that, because I don't know how in touch she is with her anger at all. And I want to be clear that anger does play a role in our health. It's not like whenever you're angry at your partner that there's something underneath that. Sometimes anger is just anger. When there's an injustice, for example, anger is absolutely appropriate and helpful. What do we do with the anger? But anyway, so for him, I think he did say, oh, well, that's not great. He might have even been reassured a little bit that she would cry, that she was hurt, and say, oh, well, maybe she does love me. Maybe I'm not actually in danger right now. And then his mode, even when he's a little bit more regulated, I still don't think he's regulated completely. I think he's probably like a 6 or 7 out of 10 at this moment. His mode is to lecture, which is a sign of a particular style of defense and attachment that can lead to abusive intimidation and language.
we have 4 weeks to get married. And for you to tell people that they're attractive people as an engaged woman, he's a cute guy, and in the real world, whatever happens, happens, right?
So I don't know if you hear it, but I hear a different tone in his voice, a little bit softer, a lot softer, and Colleen is easier. She's able to engage a little bit more. And by the way, if you are one of these people who tends to lecture under these situations. For you, what I will say is that it's not a bad idea to talk, because people, when they are like him, will be in my office. They'll be like, well, what am I supposed to say? And I'll say, well, it depends. For some people, they just need to say a lot of things in conflict. Some people don't. For those people who need to say a lot of things and it turns into a lecture, what I recommend, potentially, case by case, is to talk about your experience. This is who I am, actually, in conflict. My wife will attest to this, that I want to explain, I need to get it off of my chest. And so the healthiest way for me to route that urge is to speak from my own experience. It might be a little too wordy or too long-winded or something, but it's a need of mine to have people in my life understand what I was going through. They could tune me out or something, but I feel like I need to get it off of my chest. If I don't watch it, though, I will turn into, if I'm not aware of my feelings or I'm particularly triggered or something, I will become lectury, which, I'm guessing y'all could imagine. All I do is yammer and lecture y'all. So in a pinch, I'm going to resort to my style of things. And so I have learned to bring it back and to watch my tone. It's very important to differentiate as best I can and to just speak about my own feelings and about how I saw things, while sprinkling in a copious amount of caveats, even though it might not feel correct, but it almost always is, if not always correct, to say, I don't know if I'm accurate in this moment. It felt this way to me. I could be crazy. I mean, I will say that. I'll be like, in that moment, it felt like this is what was happening, but I don't know. Even though in the moment, I actually feel like, well, of course I felt that way because that's the way that it was. That's the way we always are in conflict. It always feels like, of course my feelings are accurate because it was accurate. That's how else are we supposed to see it? Instead of having humility and care around and tentativeness around our interpretations, because in all likelihood, in our I would say 99% of the time, whenever you're in conflict with your attachment figures, particularly if you're losing differentiation, which would be normal, then most of your interpretations of what is happening are distorted. So even though I don't feel like I was distorted when I'm recalling something that was happening earlier, I figure I am because I've learned through experience. That's what wisdom is to learn from experience and to know that in the moment you might not be the pinnacle of objectivity. And so I will sprinkle in, just like, I don't know, I could be crazy, but here's how it was for me. So that is one way you can do it. It can still be annoying to people, and my wife might be able to attest to that. But at the very least, it's not belittling and talking down and lecturing. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.